Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Laura Mariko Heifetz and I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions, Vocation and Stewardship at Vanderbilt Divinity School. Today's webinar is entitled Living in Nashville, Conversation with Current Students. This webinar we hope will provide you with information that will help you decide if the Div School is for you, and if you've already decided that the Div School is for you, that will help you figure out where you might want to live once you arrive. So we have two special guests with us. The first is Damien Pascal Dominic. He is an MDiv graduate from VDS who is pursuing a secondary master's in theology, which is the THM degree. He's a Santero priest whose ministry centers queer people of color, Latinx immigrant communities, of which he is a part, and whose research focuses on Afro-diasporic dance as prayer. Damien is a prison abolitionist and a founding member of Audre Lorde Project's Trans Justice in New York City. Welcome, Damien. And our second guest is Anna Kelly, pronouns she, her, who is a student advisor for the Office of Admissions and is graduating from the Master of Theological Studies program with a concentration in Global Christianities and Interreligious Encounter in May of 2020. She came directly to VDS from a BA in Religious Studies from Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina. Anna is a religious nun and NONE, and hopes to continue her work in international education after graduating from VDS. If you have questions during their presentation, feel free to type them into the chat box at the side as they come up, and we'll address them toward the end of the session. We'll also stop the recording and open up the session for questions at the end so you can have more of a conversation. And that's when you can show us your lovely faces and unmute yourself to ask questions directly. So thanks so much, Anna and Damien. I believe Anna is going to kick us off.
Yeah, hi everybody, welcome. I am going to talk for like 10 minutes. Just kind of a brief overview of very common questions and some practical stuff about making the transition to Nashville. I know that this is an especially stressful season to be doing that, given some of the travel restrictions right now. So we're going to try and give you some advice about how to handle that as well. So you should be able to follow along with my screen. The biggest takeaway that I would like you to have from today is that there is no singular way to live, commute, and work as a VDS student. There is really no cookie cutter standard in our community. Our students are spread all over the city. They commute in all different ways. They work all different sorts of jobs. They are in different life stages and they come from different backgrounds. So there's no one part of town where everyone is. There's no one right answer. So everything should be customized to you and what you need out of this experience. Here's an overview of Nashville, our lovely home. The map with the numbers on it marks a couple of different neighborhoods throughout the city. And then the star is where VDS is in relationship to everything else. And then there's a map that shows kind of the greater Nashville metropolitan area. My biggest tip for starting your housing journey is to try to get to know Nashville. We are a very, very cool city. And it is lovely because we have become a popular tourist destination in recent years. And so there's a lot on the internet about our city, including some great resources that I've put on this page, and we'll send this presentation out later so you can go ahead and click all these links. But the Nashville Guru has a lot of great information specifically about different neighborhoods throughout the Nashville area. Visit Music City is tailored more towards tourism, but also has a great video overview of different neighborhoods. The different neighborhoods throughout the city have kind of different vibes, depending on what you're interested in. A lot of them are very small business oriented. and the ways you commute, the amenities that are nearby, and just the overall ambiance of that area of town will be different. So my recommendation is try to get to know the city as best you can from a distance, given the resources that we have. And that can help you kind of say, this seems to be where I fit. We do have a lot of students, particularly in sort of the Green Hills, Hillsborough Village areas. We're located in Midtown, specifically, very close to Music Row. We have a lot of students in West Nashville and a lot of students in East Nashville also. We are kind of scattered all over, but those areas, as you move out away from campus, the rent tends to get lower. Oops. Sorry, that was not what I meant to do. I apologize. Here we go. So some practical tips for rental hunting. You can sign up for the Back to Grad portal as soon as you have your Vanderbilt login. And in this portal, there is a database of housing resources that include apartment complexes, housing rentals. So you can access that. And then there's also a portion of that portal where you can chat with other VDS incoming students. There's a questionnaire about living preferences, so you can start to do roommate searching there if you'd like to look within the incoming VDS class rather than just kind of Nashville at large. Most apartment complexes in this area release their availability about 60 days out. So in the next couple months is probably when you want to start doing that looking. A lot of housing rentals open availability closer to 30 days out. So depending on when you're wanting to make that move, now and the next month or two is a great time to start doing that research, so that when things start to come available, you're ready to move on it. A lot of apartment complexes right now are doing either self-guided or virtual tours. So it's actually not a terrible time to be looking at apartment complexes from a distance. It is easier than it ever has been. When I moved here, I signed a lease sight unseen, did not visit to do housing, and it's worked out wonderfully. But now it would be easier because you actually can do some of that touring ahead of time. And like I said before, or what I love to say about Vanderbilt is one of my favorite things is that we are smack dab in the middle of a city. One of the more challenging things is that we are smack dab in the middle of the city. So the rent tends to be a little bit higher right around the Vanderbilt Midtown Music Row area. So as you move out from campus, rent tends to get a little bit lower. There's a variety of ways that students get to campus. We do have on-campus parking. We use the Wesley Place parking garage the most. If you look at the parking services page, we are in zone 2. You buy a parking pass based on the zone, based on what school you are in. The yearly parking passes tend to go for about $408. I think last year they were $480 for the year. They also have been talking about different sorts of daily pass rates. There's also a number of hourly parking options and street parking with meters in that area as well. So many students drive to campus. Like I made the choice to live further and drive. That seems to be a pretty common option. Some folks live within walking distance and walk. Nashville is reasonably bikeable. There's a great biking map that I've linked here about areas that are particularly bike friendly throughout the city. With your Commodore card, you will be able to ride public buses for free. So that's another great way to get around to school or around Nashville more generally. And we also have Lyft and Uber available pretty much constantly. And those are easily accessible. Pretty much all of our students have at least one part-time job, and many of them have multiple part-time jobs or work full-time. So as a VDS student, you are not at all expected to just be a student. When we think about financial planning and housing and commuting in our schedules, we are also thinking about incorporating some sort of work into that. On-campus jobs are available, particularly through federal work study. So if you filled out the FAFSA, there should be information about that through your federal financial aid package. Those jobs pay hourly. They typically range from somewhere between $9 to $15 an hour, depending on what the job is and where on campus it is. We have a specific student hiring platform called Hireador, which is linked here. You do need your Vanderbilt login, email, and password to get into that platform. And that's a place where lots of on-campus jobs, but also some off-campus jobs will start to be posted throughout the summer and the fall. If you're interested in working with one specific area of campus or with a specific program, or if you have higher ed background and you think you'd be uniquely suited for one office, a lot of our jobs are found by word of mouth. So if there's something you have your heart set on, shoot them an email over the summer and say, hey, I'm an incoming Divinity student looking for a job. Are you hiring this fall? Generally speaking, folks love Divinity students. We are very popular work study people throughout campus. And then we'll start, as you get here in the fall, we'll start spreading word of mouth, everything we know that comes available. So getting to know us, getting to know other folks in the VDS or wider Vanderbilt community will help you with that process of finding a job too, especially if you want something on campus. We tend to spread those, not just by word of mouth, but also on our VDS community Facebook page, which we would recommend joining for jobs and many things beyond that. That's kind of our community communication base. But jobs will come up on that throughout the year as we know of them. Many folks also work off-campus jobs. It's kind of there's not one that's better than the other, especially if you're coming from a background where you have particular experience or further qualifications in a field. It may be more advantageous to stay in the field you're in, especially if you're a second career student, balancing your first career and your studies may be more profitable than other things. We also, like I said, are a big tourism city. So there tends to be no lack of tourism jobs, seasonal jobs. We are a college town through and through. So we are a community based on student workers. So depending on your expertise, the pay and the hourly availability will range just based on the job. And like I said, lots of us work some sort of combination of many things. And then our schedule, just as you're looking to plan for your first year, or at least first semester, if you are an MTS student, you will take Foundations in Hebrew Bible. If you are an MDiv student, you will take Foundations Hebrew Bible and the History of Global Christianities. So those will be your 3 core classes for the first semester. And then Hebrew Bible and Global Christianities also come with a discussion group. And those are gonna just kind of be dropped into your schedule as they are. Those tend to be either Monday and Wednesday or Monday and Thursday mornings. And then often the discussion groups are in the afternoon afterwards. So your first semester for MTS and first year for MDiv are the least flexible schedule-wise. You'll have a lot that's kind of put in place already for you, and then you can work around that. Our electives are all over the place time schedule-wise. So once you move past the core classes in your second semester or second year, you will start to have a lot of flexibility on which days you're on campus. If you'd like to do a lot in one day, if you're a morning person and you want to do every morning, or if you're working a job where you just want to come in Wednesday and Thursday and have all of your classes just on those 2 days. That's something you can do down the line. It's just a little bit more limited in that first semester since your whole cohort are taking those classes at the same time. Our classes are typically either an hour and 25 minutes or 2 hours and 40 minutes, depending on the class, either once or twice a week. And we have morning, afternoon, and evening blocks. There are no classes besides foreign language on Fridays, and those tend to be pretty early in the morning. And you'll sign up for your classes for this fall semester at orientation in August. But like I said, we should be able to give you the times for Foundations, Hebrew Bible, and History of Global Christianities a little bit further out, so you can do some planning around your schedule if you're looking for work. We also tend to have a community worship and coffee hour on Wednesday afternoons, so lots of folks like to be on campus on those days. And then our student organizations and just other events happen throughout the week. Lots of them are either sort of at a lunchtime or an evening dinner time block. So depending also how much you want to be on campus, what days you're on campus, that can kind of affect thinking about where you want to live, how far away you live, how you get to campus. Where you're working, and sort of how to manage time and money and planning around that. I was going to ask Damien if you would just give us a quick overview of where do you live, where do you work, how do you get to school, what's your schedule like?
Sure. Thanks, Anna. That was very informative. So it's something that came up for me while we were talking about jobs, and why a bunch of lights went off when you were talking about jobs and the importance of like figuring out a job, is because schedule is important, as you were showing, but also as a student, you're always thinking about the future. It's hard to be present. I'll say that, it's the truth, because you're thinking about next semester and next year when you'll graduate. And so in being in your first year, something that comes up is, what will I do for field ed if I'm an MDiv? And the way to set yourself up in a good place is basically setting up your job as a possible field education placement, right? And so that being said, it's 12 to 15 hours that you'll be in field ed in your second year. And if you're already getting paid in your first year for it, it's an easy transition. So think about those things when you're thinking about jobs, especially if they are at BDS or if they're in the larger university setting. Okay, so veering over to my end of the woods, let's see. So when I first started BDS, I lived across the street from the education college, from Peabody. And what I realized was, rent, and I'll give you numbers. Rent 5 years ago was $1,300, right? And I lived across campus. And so currently rent is averaging about $1,600, right? And so the increments went up throughout the years. But that's something to take note of. As is in every city, it's growing, and the rent goes up every year. I currently live at Friendship House, which is a program run by Professor Yaakov Hammond. And he's working with Friendship House, is partnered up with Urban Housing, and Urban Housing owns about 3 current houses, which are apartment complexes where folks with neurological differences are paired up with communities of students. So currently Friendship House 1 and Friendship House 2, I currently live in Friendship House 2, are mixed communities of folks with neurological differences and MDiv students. And in these houses, basically, we meet for dinner once a week. We rotate who runs the dinners. And I have been paired with what folks in Friendship House called friends. I was paired up with a friend for throughout the year, and we made meals once every 2 to 3 months when we rotated in, right? And so it's a built-in community that's really helpful for students who are in ministry, I would say. So that's one option. The second option is Disciples House. If you're a Disciples of Christ, it's great. It's housing for folks who are in that denomination, but also you don't have to be in that denomination. You could actually just apply and say that you need housing. And what's tough about these programs, though, is that at this point, it would be going into your second year where you'd possibly get an apartment because of the wait list that is currently set up. But there are options, just to note. Currently I live about 10 minutes away from campus, which is not far at all. And I feel like for the most part, when people talk about their commutes and they live outside of the Vanderbilt area, it's about 10 to 15 minutes, or it's about 20 to half an hour, depending on your commute, right? Because again, Nashville's a growing city and the traffic is pretty heavy at certain hours. And so what I know from most folks is people arrive very early, go to the library and do their thing, as in get their readings done, get their work done, and then go to classes. Or you can come in and know that you'll have that commute, right? For the most part, though, I've been able to ride my bike throughout the summers and into the fall. It gets a little tricky in the summer and in the spring, I would say, because it rains. But other than that, it's been a pretty solid commute. Also in Friendship House, there's folks that don't own cars, and we're able to work together and build a system of mutual aid where one person goes to the grocery store every week and they get a little bit of gas money and folks are able to go to the store with them. So there's a way to help each other out in community, and that can happen outside of Friendship House. It all depends on how you're able to organize with folks and how you're able to grow in your cohort, I would say. Let's see, what else came up? There's that. I would say the rent in these programs are about a quarter of what I mentioned before. So if it's $1,600, it would be about 1/3 of that, approximately. So those are some numbers for you to have, just to have note of. Yeah, I can think of 20 other things, but I really want to hear questions from folks.
Right, let's see. I was gonna say real quick, I live south of the city, about 10 minutes, kind of in the Berry Hill area in an apartment complex. I found that going south helped with rent a bit. I drive to campus too. It's about 10 minutes if you don't drive during rush hour. And I buy a parking pass in the garage and think that's super doable. Yeah. If you have specific questions, if you're listening to this on a recording, or if you have more questions after this webinar is over, feel free. My contact info is up here. So is Damien's. And our general admissions inbox is open for you at any time. So please feel free to reach out to us that way. And otherwise, I think we're done and ready for questions.
Thank you so much. I am actually going to go ahead and stop the recording.